When someone shows you disrespect, it is rarely a mistake. It is always an act, even if unconscious, but intentional. People rarely show contempt for those they sense strength in. Contempt is a touchstone, a probe by fire. It is a subtle social strike where one person tests another's weakness, the boundary, whether they will allow an invasion. Machiavelli warned in his works, people offend either out of fear or contempt. And if you are offended, it means they either fear consequences or are sure there will be none. Therefore, disrespect itself is not the end, but a symptom. This is not something to take as a personal insult. It's a signal that they see in you not a threat, but an opportunity. An opportunity to suppress, to exploit, to break. They may already see you as someone who's lost. They won't necessarily say it out loud. You'll read it in their tone, their gestures, the pauses, the subtle contempt even in praise. And if you don't notice it, you're already at a disadvantage. From this comes the first truth: you can't fight disrespect head-on. It doesn't exist on its own. It grows from a foundation, from weakness, from lost status, from the illusion of your defenselessness. It's not the plant, it's the root. And you must destroy not the reaction, but the cause. Not battle the external, but reshape the internal. That's where the Machiavellian path begins. Not with revenge, but with analysis. Not with shouting, but with observation. And if you sense people have started treating you with contempt, stop. Don't react. Freeze, not to surrender, but to survey the terrain. You need to understand where you showed weakness. Where you said too much. Where you showed fear. Where you gave too much of yourself for nothing. Where you became predictable. Where you started justifying yourself. Where you lost the thread in your gaze. That disrespect wasn't random. You allowed it. That doesn't mean you're guilty. It means you left a space, and it got filled. And from this follows the next step. Not revenge. Not shouting. Not striking back. But destroying the very illusion of your weakness. Not the enemy, not yet. First, yourself. Because unless the perception of you changes, nothing else will. The world doesn't respect strength it can't feel. You can be smart, fair, even generous. But if no threat can be read in you, they'll treat you as a resource. Or as furniture. So your next task is not to become strong, but to appear strong. Machiavelli was ruthless on this point. People judge by appearances, not essence. They see, but they don't feel. Disrespect feeds on this very gap between who you really are and how you're perceived. That's not hypocrisy, it's strategy. In a world of power, strength isn't about being able to strike. The strong one is the one who looks like they could strike. Or worse, the one who might not strike today, but will remember. Machiavelli wrote, "One should fear those who cause harm not for what they've done, but for what they have yet to do." That's why your image is a weapon, and it must be reloaded. Stop justifying yourself. Stop explaining. Stop asking for fairness. In the world of power, fairness is the result of fear, not compassion. Your task is to build a presence that doesn't provoke the urge to humiliate. This isn't about an angry face or visible aggression. It's restrained silence, a steady gaze, complete stillness in the face of provocation, the kind that signals danger. Something in your walk, your voice, your eyes must shift. Not suddenly, as if you've already become someone else, more precise, more dangerous, colder. The enemy senses not your words, but your aura. People don't respect those who speak loudly. They fear those who speak little but act without warning. The illusion of your weakness wasn't in what you said, it was in how you lived up to now. So don't explain it, destroy it. With your actions. In every detail. In every refusal. In every look. That destruction must be silent. Don't shout that you've changed. Just change your tone. Don't prove your strength. Just stop playing along. Don't argue. Just walk away from the game where respect for you was lost. Let them feel uneasy. Let them notice the absence of the old version of you, soft, compliant, explaining. And in that silence, a thought will begin to form. He no longer forgives. He no longer explains. He no longer fears. And only then, for the first time, fear will appear in their eyes. Because as Machiavelli taught, respect is born of fear. But when that fear is just beginning, it's too early to use it. It must ripen. And to let it ripen, you must start managing not the situation, but yourself. Because true control over others begins with control over yourself. This leads to the obvious next step. Take power over yourself before trying to take it over them. Because you cannot lead others if you can't lead yourself. Machiavelli understood perfectly. A man ruled by emotion is a tool in the hands of someone colder. Power requires inner silence, not for show, but real. When you no longer react instantly. When you don't lash out. When you no longer trade your control for someone else's words. Because every time they provoked you and you flared up, you lost. An enemy doesn't win by acting. They win by triggering your reaction. And you gave it. Self-control isn't weakness. It's the ultimate strategy. It's the moment when you don't just stay silent. You watch, you analyze, you gather. Machiavelli said, you can't rule a state if you can't rule yourself. But what is personal power, if not a miniature state? Your speech, your walk, your silence, these are your laws, your throne, your fortress. And if you break down, you are an anarchist in your own territory. That's why the destruction of the enemy cannot be impulsive. It must be measured, delayed, and ripened. True revenge is not a spontaneous outburst, but a carefully constructed act, where you're beyond suspicion, beyond noise, beyond emotion. You're not shouting, you're designing. You're not offended, you're creating conditions in which the enemy destroys himself. But as long as you don't belong to yourself, this is impossible. If you're shaken from within, the enemy will play on that instability. That's why you must start not with them, not with the fight, not with revenge, but with straightening your inner axis. Seal the energy leaks. Stop conversations that lead nowhere. Stop arguing with fools. Stop saving those who don't want to be saved. Stop explaining yourself to the ignorant, and even inside yourself, stop complaining, self-blaming, self-pitying. All of this is a leak of power. And a person with leaking pipes inside cannot carry a torch, he'll burn himself. The people you want to destroy don't deserve your rage. They don't deserve your pain. They don't deserve your dreams, your thoughts, your words. They are emptiness that you can fill with power, but only if you learn not to hand yourself over to anyone. No strategy works if you are not centralized in yourself. Until you become the master of your own body, your mind, and your reactions, you cannot be the master in any relationship. Which means the next truth is, don't strike at emotion, strike at position. Because emotion is a target that changes every second. A person may cry, get angry, laugh, but their structure remains. Their role, their influence, their support, that's where real vulnerability lives. Machiavelli kept repeating, injure in such a way that you need not fear revenge. And that is only possible in one case: if you don't strike the face, you dismantle the system in which the enemy exists. Not his feelings, but his position. Someone who disrespects you is likely supported by external resources. An audience, a social environment, public approval, an illusion of impunity. He doesn't stand alone, he's held up by something. If you hit his psyche, he might justify himself, escape, or trigger sympathy. But if you quietly remove his supports, he begins to collapse, not with a scream, not with a crash, but silently. He starts losing influence, losing voice, losing his audience, losing his footing. And worst of all, he starts losing his sense of self. Your task is to make the strike seem like it came not from you, but from the world. Not from a person, but from a sequence of events. Let it look like a chain of coincidences. The enemy will search for where the blow came from, and find nothing. He'll grow agitated, suspicious, spiral into paranoia, and that alone will weaken him. He'll start defending himself from everyone, even his own. He'll become guarded, withdrawn, nervous. People will begin to avoid him, not because you harmed him, but because he became broken. That is victory without a fight. The rare kind Machiavelli spoke of with special reverence. Because the quieter your moves, the louder the outcome. And the longer you stay in the shadows, the greater you grow in the eyes of the observers. People respect power without shouting. They fear the one they've never seen act, but have seen destroy. Your power should not be obvious. It should be felt. A slight chill in the room when you enter. A silent association with consequences. Not a story where you won, but a feeling that arguing with you is dangerous. That's the beginning of the next phase. Not just strategic revenge, but the formation of fear is the stable currency of your power. Because if respect cannot be earned through kindness, it must be built on fear. And it is from fear, not from words, that true respect is born. Which means the next step is this. Fear is the cement of respect. Because respect built on kindness is fragile. It relies on gratitude, sympathy, feelings, and feelings are fickle. Today they're with you, tomorrow with someone else. Machiavelli was ruthless in this. It's better to be feared than loved. If you can't be both. Because love can vanish. But fear, if rooted correctly, stays. It keeps working even in your absence. Even when you're not in the room, it whispers. Be careful. That is real power. But fear must be built, not imposed. Not loud. Not flashy. But quiet. Dense. Structural. It doesn't arrive with threats, it arrives with reputation. You must never say, you can't treat me like this. People must already know, that won't work. Because someone already tried, and disappeared. Or fell. Or lost face. Or was removed from the game without a war being declared. And no one fully understood how it happened. But everyone felt why. This feeling is born not from revenge, but from inevitability. You don't need to be terrifying. You need to be dangerous. And the difference is vast. The terrifying man yells, rages, seeks conflict. The dangerous man is silent. He doesn't play games. He doesn't waste energy on arguments. He watches, listens, and forgets nothing. His gaze holds no desire to prove. Only the knowledge of when and how to strike, if needed. That kind of fear becomes the cement relationships are built on. People begin to weigh their words. To wonder if provoking you is worth it. They sense something in you. Something that doesn't forgive. Doesn't explain. Doesn't offer second chances. And in this birth of fear, there is peace. Because now you no longer need to defend yourself. No need to explain. You only need to exist. And the most interesting part, you will rarely need to destroy directly. Because most enemies will leave on their own. Those who once showed disrespect will feel they crossed the line. And that line isn't red, it's silent. They'll realize their mistake wasn't in the words they said, but in their judgment. That you're not who you seem to be. And that realization will break them more than any open response. But fear is a subtle tool. You can't use it the same way twice. It must not become a habit. It should stand as a monument to a single event, rare, but unforgettable. That's why destruction must be one time and irreversible. And this leads us to the next decisive stage. Don't repeat revenge, repeat the lesson. Because true power lies not in punishing again and again, but in never needing to punish anyone else. Machiavelli wrote, "He who inflicts harm must do so all at once, so that he does not have to fear retaliation." That is not cruelty, it's calculation. If you're forced to seek revenge often, you don't inspire fear, you're just emotional. And an emotional person is predictable. They can be provoked, redirected, used against themselves. But if you deliver one strike and everything changes afterward, that stays not just as a fact, but in the body. People may not remember what exactly happened, but they remember that after that moment, you became someone else. Colder, stricter, more distant. They remember that the one who crossed the line disappeared, or broke, or simply was never the same again. And that becomes a lesson not just for him, but for everyone who watched from the side. A lesson that needs no explanation, silent but harsh, almost sacred. The lesson must be unambiguous. No ambiguity, no justification, no confusion. It must strike like lightning. Brief, blinding, inevitable. So that anyone who even considers repeating the same mistake remembers not the details, but the feeling. So that the very air around your name changes. So that respect for you no longer rests on sympathy, but on the fear of repeating someone else's failure. You don't need to prove you were right. You don't need to explain your actions. A true lesson requires no commentary. And if you've done everything right, that lesson will continue to work for years. Because destruction is not an action. It's a transformation of the field around you. A space where respect is built on knowledge. He can strike, and he won't stop until it's done. After that, there's no need to repeat. The enemy is gone. The lesson remains. And you move forward. Because true power doesn't stay at the site of destruction. It doesn't stand on bones. It keeps moving. Destruction was an act of defense, not an end in itself. And if you linger where the enemy fell, you become their shadow. So, the ultimate power lies in the ability to leave silently. Without triumph, without a final word. Without explanation. Like a law of nature that came and went. Leaving behind only silence and fear. Therefore, if you want to finish well, you must not deliver the final blow, but disappear. Leave at the right time, when the destruction is complete. And this is the last move. Because victory is not the moment the enemy falls. Victory is the moment when you no longer need their presence. Not even as a reminder. Machiavelli, the true strategist, warned. When you win, do not linger on the battlefield. A true ruler is not the one who stays by the ashes, but the one who passes through the fire and vanishes, leaving only smoke and speculation. If you are truly strong, you don't replay your revenge over and over. You don't boast of it, don't exaggerate it, don't repeat it in conversations. You leave it in the past as a sign, a shadow, a hint. Victory is not theater, it's the end of the scene. And after a good scene, there should always be a dark curtain. Not for show, but for closure. Leaving is also a form of power. When you don't finish off, don't clarify, don't explain. You take away the enemy's last right, the right to dialogue. They no longer exist. They are no longer interesting. They are no longer needed. They are excluded not only from life but from memory. And that is the most terrifying. Because death is not defeat. Defeat is oblivion. And you leave. Cold, calm, not vengeful, but restoring order. Not a destroyer, but a corrector of balance. You are not cruel, you are precise. You are not heartless, you just don't waste your soul where it doesn't matter. And that is your victory. Not over the enemy, but over yourself. Because you didn't get stuck in resentment. You didn't dissolve in rage. You went through it and stayed whole. When you leave without a trace, you leave only a legend. And a legend is always scarier than the truth. It lives longer, it's wider, it's deeper. And no one knows exactly what you did. But everyone knows it's better not to joke with you. Because somewhere behind your silence, behind your absence, behind your disappearance, lies something inexplicable, yet clearly felt. Power, strategy, inevitability. You didn't just destroy those who showed disrespect. You corrected the hierarchy of the world, where they tried to put you lower. But you didn't become equal. You became invisible, yet felt above. This is not revenge. This is a new reality. where you no longer explain, fight, or react. You simply exist as a presence that is respected without reminder. M.